You have to give it, I introduced Preet to Draplin. So that credit should go to me, basically. That's where I'll
Well,
begin.
there you are. I remember you hanging out of that, purple PT Cruiser you guys were cruising around in. I remember you two screaming, throwing rocks. Well, nice to see you, Paul. Nice to see you.
Big fan. I've been following your work for a very, very long time, especially early on as a designer when I was finding my footing and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I'm a big fan of everything that you're doing. The authentic nature with which you present yourself, the work that you put out, the kind of work that you do. So in fact, all the things that I admire you for is basically what I want people to take away from today's talk. And that is that if there's one thing that people can take away from today's talk is that how to be authentic and true to yourself, which Draplin is like the beacon of. He is, if you look at, our designers as a career, and you look at, how we start out, from imitating and copying others and trying to find our own style. What Draplin has done from beginning till now, he's kept that tapestry, that thread of authentic to who he is throughout his career. So that's something that I would definitely want, the people watching to take away, that it's not about just copying others from the lens of, you know, fancy titles or, just knowing, being part of these big corporations. You could find your own path and do what you like doing, and this actually comes from this very simple insight. A lot of young designers who I talk to or I hear, they want to start out as graphic designers, but they see that they're going to make more money doing product design. There's nothing wrong with product design. I'm just saying that if there's something that you truly are passionate about, care about, and that's something that Draplin does really well, then you can find a way to make that into a living and a career. So that's definitely going to be the theme of this conversation today. Um, and by the way, I just learned this new term, the IC, which is an individual contributor, which Draplin is again. He is, from what I understand, he works alone, solo, but uh, and he stays away from all this fancy jargon and all of this, and keeps it super real. And so I'm gonna hand it back. I'm gonna actually hand it to Draplin with a simple question, and in his words, and this is the language he uses. So, what are the couple of moves creatives, young designers coming into the field do to take the first steps to get their life on track?
Oh, wow. Well, thanks for having me, Paul. All this, and Preet, thanks you guys. Good job. A little shout out to Preet's mom and Preet's better half. That's the best one I've heard in a while. That's keeps all this stuff going. That was awesome. Um, a couple things to get their lives on track. It's a big question. I'm trying to get the right
From a
answer.
design perspective, from a
Yeah.
pursuing, yeah.
Well, I think just on a really large overarching zone. To always remember that this stuff can just be fun. Like, that's, uh, a lot of the stuff that I talk to youngsters about is about how they don't like their job because, their job doesn't allow them to be very creative, or there's someone kind of, a boss kind of lording over them. And by the way, that's just the way that this stuff goes. Um, but what the boss can't touch is they can't mess when you get out of work. They can't mess with that time. And maybe that's where you find the buzz, which is this stuff can be really fun, and something to think about is just the next time that you go and get your insurance, from your, and I know we're not going out, and I know we're not sitting in people's offices. Maybe you are, but if you're at your insurance agent and they're dialing up the numbers and they're going to give you a quote, just look at their desk. Just look at the software and just look at their computers. Like, we are so lucky to do what we do, to be creative, to have beautiful software, beautiful computers, desks filled with cool stuff. And yet we still find ways to complain about how hard our jobs are and stuff, right? Right. So what I'll say is, I'm just going to say, listen, go to your insurance guy and sit with that turkey for a while, and you're going to come racing back to whatever job you have, because it's pretty cool what you get to do. Now, if you're still feeling a little poopy about your job, then why did you do this? And is it just to make money? Because if it was just to make money, then you need to wrap your head around that and then kill it. But if it's because you love design and being creative and making stuff, your job might not have room for that. So you need to make it on your own time. So that's just one thing to always think about, is like how thankful you should be that you get to be a young person in design, and you're just starting out. By the way, it always starts in the muck and you work your way up. That's just the way it's going to be, right? So from a very young age, probably with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, I understood clearly that there was this landscape ahead of me that was going to be a little rocky. And I was looking for little ways, ins and outs. And I just knew inherently that the only way I'm going to be able to have that buzz is to make my own stuff. I mean, I just knew it, like why beat around the bush and like try to get my boss or my job or my whatever to adhere to what I want to do. That's not going to happen. Those guys are selling something, and your job is to help them sell something, and your job to get that stuff out the door. And you're one little part of that, right? Just be okay with that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it was very healthy for me when I was starting out to be like, wow, this is just fun to do. And how do I make some traction there? Well, you know how I did it? By just making time every night to do something fun with this stuff. So I wouldn't let it turn into a job, because it can turn into that real quick, So yeah, I hope that sounds okay. Yeah.
That sounds fantastic, actually. So I'm gonna just summarize that. Keep it fun, and don't overcomplicate things. Keep it simple, because that's where the joy is, and why. And just remember why you're doing it in the first place. And don't let money be the driver, because you don't want to end up at the end of your career and feel like all you were doing was chasing money.
And
Uh,
also, sorry to cut you off, but you know what?
no,
Money
go ahead.
is such a big part of this. Like, you know what? If that's how you pay your rent, let that be your laser focus, right? But that's just how you pay your rent. Don't give your heart completely to that. You know what I mean? Because it might be broken. It's just about being practical. I just didn't have like I don't even know what you even call it, thousand options to say, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to sleep in. No, I had to like pay bills and pay back school loans and stuff. So you quickly make sure that you are keeping your cool in that department. You know what I mean? You just quickly, and I just wrap my head around it. This is how I'm going to make my rent, my paycheck, and my things. But beyond that, and see, the fun part about that is when I learned to love this stuff, just for me, um, it was I became fearless, and I started to make my own stuff and just put it out into the world, whether or not it was good or bad. I just wasn't worried about that. I was enjoying it. But one foot in the making money, zone, and one foot in the just making sure this stuff is fun. So yeah, both are important. You know, both.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Before, just want to make a quick shout out. For all the people who have questions, please drop them in the chat, and at some point, I will ask them. I will present them to Draplin so that they can be answered. But now, jumping back to the point that you made, that's actually a really good point. I think the place where somebody who truly cares about just doing graphic design or making something cool like a sticker or badge, I think where they sort of get diluted and get lost is because they have to pay bills. They also want to make money. So early on, how were you sort of? What are the feelings and emotions were you going through? When you wanted to just pursue this passion, because I did see that you have worked in a full time job as well, and then left it, and were like never going back.
Yeah, I mean it's a little unfair to that group because they were a great group of people. It was a place called Cinco Design, but it wasn't. To go back and just kind of say like, there's one job I always glaze over. I always forget to talk about because it was kind of a blip. But what it was for like a weekly newspaper, want ad newspaper called a nickel ads. They had a classified section, and then if you were like a big, rancher, this is out in, Eastern Oregon where they have all the, all the ranches and all the scrub brush and all this kind of stuff. If you wanted to sell your big trailer or truck, you could go in there and I would take a photo of it for you, lay out an ad, and they would pay $100 to sell their truck for 25,000, whatever it was. I forget to talk about that. I was paid hourly, and I remember when I went in, it was minimum wage, but I remember instantly being like just set on sort of fire within myself, like I don't have to work a pizza job. What these hands know how to do, which was PageMaker, right, and Photoshop in 1995 and 96. With what these hands know how to do, I didn't even have my own computer yet, right? With what I can generate with these hands, I don't have to make pizza. I don't have to work at a up at the mountain or whatever these things were that we were doing in Bend, Oregon. And I remember just being thankful for that. And it was the same amount of money I made at my pizza job, but I was inside, I was clean, So I remember that being feeling like a privilege. And then you run into all these other people around you who are like, you're not being paid enough, and they work us too much, and the technology needs to be updated, and just all the shit you hear, on the periphery. And all I could, still think about is like, I got to be inside and clean and make this stuff and help these big, good old boy ranchers and shit sell their stuff and learn how to talk to people. Because, at the time I was a scumbag snowboarder, but when you were out there talking to some, big tough rancher guy, you have to kind of learn how to assert yourself and provide solutions and stuff, So I think about that first job, because it showed me that like, wow, there's another world out there where I can use my hands to make a living, and I did. And that felt really special. But I also saw the limitations. So, then I go back to school for a couple of years, and I go work at a snowboard magazine for a couple of years in Los Angeles, and then I get back to the world here in Portland, where I have my first studio job. And I had already kind of surpassed some of the little marks that you have to kind of check off for yourself. I just didn't know it yet, right? So when I get into that job, it's a good job. They pay you well. You are insured and all this kind of stuff. And there's lots of meetings and lots of what it takes to run a smart agency. But one guy pulled me aside after a couple of years and said, you can do this on your own. Your ability to, they saw me working at night. They saw me, there's a big ping pong table there. And when everyone would go home, like I would come in and like screen print on it and shit, because it was just more real estate than my crappy little apartment, You had all this room to bang around, and then you would leave and set the alarm, and I would do that every night, and have all this space to use, because people would leave at 5:30. And to me, it was a big playground of like, all right, I have all this facility and I get to use all this stuff, and you have all this space. They saw me doing that. So one guy pulled me aside and said, hey, you've already proven to me that you have something. And you'll do this, you get your job done, and then you do all this other stuff on your own. Why couldn't you kind of merge those or have a little more control with your own little sort of destiny or something, And I said, well, what the hell does that even mean? And he just laid it out for me, when you leave a job and you, here's what it looks like. And it was all very pragmatic. Make sure you have this much in the bank. Don't just jump out. Don't just quit. If you're going to leave, give them a month so they can find someone else to replace. There's all these little aspects of like being a good citizen, right? But when I left that thing, it was because I had already graduated to a certain level, and I just didn't even know it, and it took me a couple years of being a good team member to understand like maybe I could carve out, even with a little bit sketchier, let's just say less money, my own way, where I didn't have to even go into a job anymore. And it turns out it worked. That was 2004 when I went on my own. And, I saved money, I bought a house. My parents freaked out because I bought a house and then quit my job, It's like, wow, are you going to pay for this? Well, I'd saved money, I'd saved some money. So yeah, I look back at that time where it's like I have to be really careful because I don't want to say that having a job is not the right thing. It's what's right for you. You know, some people are like that sort of person that needs to be um, in a team setting where you have someone telling you what to kind of do, and or you telling someone to do. It's fine. I was okay with that too, but I also, you know, when I got on my own, that's where I started to make money. You know, I could say yes to everything. You know,
Right.
it was really exhilarating. Yeah.
I love that. There's 3 points that you sort of illustrated. One was that you learned to talk to clients.
Mm.
I would definitely want to touch on that. And one other thing was, this whole idea of like falling in love with what you're doing, be immersed in it, go deep in it, and do it for not only just for the clients, but for yourself, which you were doing. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about, first is learning to talk with clients and what do you see youngsters getting wrong there, or what are the mistakes that you might have made on your path, and what did you learn from them?
Well, it turns out I've had a mistake-free path. Just look at my face. Just kidding. Just kidding. Paul, it's every 15 minutes I'm fucking something else. Sorry with the language. Sorry with the language. I heard let a little sweary out, so then the gates have been wide open. So,
Disclaimer, ladies and gentlemen, there is going to be some swearing.
I'll be a little altar boy for you, Mr. Singh. No problem. So listen, here's what I would say. One of the indulgences I saw when I went to design school, Minneapolis College of Art and Design, was I saw this sort of unwritten rule of how people will shit on each other, like in the critique side of the world, right? And it's power plays. And here's someone who's trying to get to the top of the class, and here's someone trying to get the top of the grade, and then here's someone who had a bad day, and then they show a little bit of bad work, or whether they didn't get their work quite done, and someone takes a little bit of a power over them to kind of slam into the dirt. And I remember that feeling really indulgent. And like, you know what? If your mom was presenting that project, you wouldn't talk that way. But you know what? How is that any different in your family or on your apartment, with roommates or your friends or in this classroom setting? This is not about capitalizing on someone else and then, grinding them down. I watched people do that. And I was just, it was horrific to me that someone would indulge in that, how fucking embarrassing that was for that person doing it. So I quickly saw, like, you know what? There's a way to talk about things. There's a way to approach things. Now, listen, I know I'm talking like an animal with you right now. But if you put me on the phone, Paul, if you called me for a job, that's a completely different person. That's a different thing. If Preet called me and said, hey, do this for us, that's a whole different person, because you don't know where you're coming from or what if you're in your home or if you're in a big office or whatever. So you better err on the side of just being a good citizen. So I watched this stuff go down, and it scared me because it was such an easy thing for someone to go to that quick. And I just remember stopping myself and being like, if I'm going to go and find something that needs to be worked on, you have to talk about what was good first, and then go to the things that need to be worked. You don't just take and take from people. You just watch people taking from people. And by the way, there's always some math there. The louder they are, the shittier their own portfolio always is. You know what I mean? There's something about that, because they're having to make up for inadequacies in other places. So I just learned, like, hey, be cool, be fair. I know I say a lot of dumb stuff in the world, but there's a time and a place, kind of. And it's like, if you're there and someone's got your ear, you are lucky to have their ear, and you better be cool about it, right? So, okay, when I went into, here's where I can't talk about anything because it's undisclosed, whatever, Cinco Design office, and we have a client on the phone who is yelling at us, yelling on the phone. It's the same buzz in my mouth, like, how indulgent. Who do you think you are to scream at this? I can take it because I know you're a bad person.
Yeah.
But the rest of the people on this call, they're freaked out. It's like abuse or something. And I I remember that being like, you know what? There's a better way to do this. We are leading by design and good decision making. And this guy's freaking out. Like, what, and then being empathetic, like, well, what's the pressure he's under? She's under, whoever it was. So, you know, it's not, here's the thing. In art school, you watch some young kid get chewed up and then they become meek and small, you know? And one of the greatest compliments I ever had was from a friend who I went to school with, who 10 years later I was on the road and she said, I want to thank you. She said, when I was having a rough patch and I was afraid to put my work up and no one knew me in the class, and I put my work up and everyone was quiet, you were the one to kind of take the turn and start with what was good. And you saw that I was having a hard time. And then you took the turn, to kind of say, okay, now here's what could be worked on. And what you taught me there was that, there was time for everybody. And I mean, I don't remember this, but I just kind of hugged her at this event and was like, I'm so glad it's not the other way. Like I said something horrific, But she said, no, after that, it's like we saw you saw someone do that, then you tried that. And then I learned how to talk about my work that way and be more confident, and just how to change things or how to take something head on. So, listen, I know we're in this weird world now where everything is digital and everything is a Zoom call away, but you can hear me now, we're talking, but there's other ways to exhibit, confidence and craft. It's like an email. It's understanding how to spell and understanding how to say, thank you, Paul, comma, Paul, not just LOL and all this kind of like, creepy, quick garbage. It's like exhibit craft, good craft in the way that you talk, in the way that you say thank you, in the way that you have to change things, in the way that you have to take it on the chin. I get emails where it's like, I read the email and I realize I don't get to go, like I'm not done yet. I'm not done today. Now I have to work 3 more hours because someone made a change. Well, there's ways to go high on that. Just kind of go high and say, all right, I'm going to do it right now and we'll keep it. And, I'm going to fire it off before I go home. I expect feedback in the morning, please, and thank you. There's just ways to talk about stuff, and I know you go do a Google for me and you see some pretty stupid things, but that's just me being a jerk, amongst buddies. But it's different when someone, stands up in front of a bunch of people. So, don't indulge, in taking advantage of someone like that. Be a good citizen, understand that your words matter, and by the way, we're all capable of learning to get better, you know what I mean? So I don't know how this even sounds, Paul, but I just snip me if I'm going too long, man, so.
No, this is
No, this is
actually really
actually really
good.
good.
This in
This, in
fact
fact,
leads
leads
me
me
to the
to the
next
next
part
part
where you're
where you're
talking
talking
about,
about,
exhibiting your
your
craft,
craft,
but
but
you're doing it not only just in your, Adobe Illustrator or your poster, but in the way you talk, the way you communicate, the way you relate to other human beings. It's just an embodiment of who you are, and that comes through in everything that you do. And that becomes a part of your brand, and that's how people begin to relate to you. So it's not just the work that you're doing, but the person that you are,
Right.
things that you stand for. I love that you exhibit your craft everywhere, and
Well,
that's that.
there's lots of ways to see exactly who you are and how you're going to act before you even open your mouth. You know,
Yeah,
it could be in the way that you send in an attachment in an email. All you people listening, where are you at in this Zoom window? All you people listening, listen, I'm gonna get a word in here, Paul. If someone in here is sending some 43 meg attachment, you're dead to me. Just there's no more room for that stuff. You send a 3K Dropbox link, that is elegant. That's
yeah,
elegant. It's protected.
yeah,
It's you're not clogging up people's stuff with all these unnecessary attachments,
yeah,
and it shows that you understand the tools, right? Because one's ability to communicate is just another way to get from A to Z. One's ability to be able to cut through all the bullshit and have that email be human, terse, and professional, and right to the old point, and then have a little flair of humanity, which is, Paul, thank you for your time. Aaron, whatever, and sign your name, not just ha, LOL, no, this kind of shit. Take the time to keep the things up, and then beyond that, it's like I take a lot of time to like keep all my emails sorted. So anything that would have come from Preet in the last couple months on the lead up to this, it's all sorted into a remote design week folder. It takes time to do it, but it's what I owe to the project. It's what I owe. So when he says to me, I need you on this day at this time, and I know I'm ready, and I went and looked you up, Paul. And I went and just checked. All that is in one folder. Efficiency. So there's a lot of things that people can see. I hear about it from people that are hiring people like, man, this guy's got a lot of talent. And his email's rough. Or this young lady, she needs a little bit of work, but God, she can communicate so well. And we need that. We'll teach her all that other stuff. But the other things, and this other first guy, he can't spell. And he's not going to work on that. It's hard, and that goes back to like my mom, who would tell me about like how to write a letter, when I was a kid and stuff. And I know it, it chews up a lot of your time, but there's efficiencies. So the things that people can see, you have to understand what they can see. They can see, your craft inside, the way you make an Instagram post, or the way that you think about your Instagram. It shouldn't just be the same. It should be like a roller coaster of color and content and serious and goofy and, selling something. If you look at the DDC thing, I know that people go talk about that at conferences because I've sat in those chats. And it was like, there's craft in just the way that you show yourself to the world, So, and I think, we should always err on the side of good craft. I mean, anything for that matter, how you keep notes in your field notes or how you do whatever, do a good job. There's little things you can do that add up in big ways later on, and the scary part is people can see a lot of that stuff, and then they'll kind of judge you on it, so I try to keep my cool, I try.
I love this last bit that you said where, speaking of field notes and getting organized, it's not that you're just organizing your Photoshop layers, but you're also organizing your emails. It's just how you are as a person. And that comes through in conversations, especially when you're giving interviews for a job role. And you're, as a designer, you could say that, I'm a user experience designer, but if you're not thinking about the person you're sending the email to, then what kind of user experience designer are you to begin with?
There's so much to read, and just what you said right there, like just how you can communicate, how you store your files, like what you said about the Photoshop thing. Like I know I just take this time to be organized, because later on, if I have to crack that thing open, I can get to where I need to go quicker. That's like less breadcrumbs, like just make a direct path to get to where you need to go. And it's all about elegance. I know I'm not an elegant person, per se, but hopefully in the files and the dance of this stuff, I'm shedding a lot of time because I can get around to stuff quick, which gives me more time to just play, later on or whatever, or cash that paycheck and keep moving, um, oh man, I've heard the stories where these business owners will say, I brought a bunch of kids in, and the files have just gone to shit because they're not saving things right. And it's like, oh, come on, well, someone needs to tell them the right way to do it. Someone told me the right way to do it. Here's how you build a file name, naming convention. It's nerdy stuff, but it matters. We're all on phones and digital things and stuff and things. And it's about how to command the language, how to command the software, how to command your environment around you so you can get your job done, so we can all get out of here. It's all good stuff. It's just, everything's going fast. We're in a pandemic where we're upside down and all freaked out, and yet these little tiny decisions mean that much more, in all this Zoom world and stuff and questions and how to get to the bottom of something. It means a lot. Take the time to have, well-formed sentences and stuff so you can get to the bottom of it. Otherwise, people having to write back and say, did you get my email? I got your email, man. I just didn't reply yet. I was having lunch. whatever. Yeah, there's ways to, you know, you don't pound on them too hard when they do those little tactics. You just kind of say, yeah, I was taking a leak or whatever. I don't know, but all
Right.
right. Sorry. Sorry.
So, hopefully, I'm not cutting you, because I want to cover a little bit more. I'm actually a little bit more ambitious for what we can get covered, but I'm just going to quickly summarize before I slightly switch gears. One is, to remember that at any point in your career, you want to be having fun, be thankful, and keep it simple. Don't get lost in unnecessary fluff. Then the other piece was, learn to talk, learn to communicate, and you're expressing your craft not only through your design, your product design work, the way you're communicating, the way you show up. I think that's what you just touched on. And then the other piece was, think about the end person. Not only if you're, especially if you're a user experience designer or human centered designer, that if
Yeah.
you're sending emails, don't send 45 gigabyte attachments that's going to blow up somebody's inbox. So
Yeah.
any final thoughts, any final notes before we switch gears?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is just sort of like my favorite designers. It's not necessarily their ability to make this awesome thing because here's the deal. When you see that they can work in an efficient way, that is so attractive to me because it means they can get what they need to get done in a quick way. That's, if it's some big wrestling match, where they're having to, get this stuff, shit out, that's it's kind of bad craft. So my favorite designers have always been someone who wasn't afraid to show me how they stored their files, how the techniques they used. So like when I do my skill shares and stuff, I love to show, they might not be the best way of doing things, but I love to show that stuff because someone showed me those things and they were open to sharing their little techniques and stuff. Like that's all good stuff. So, be open, you guys, share with each other and we'll all get this job done and then go home and then, do whatever we're going to do, Pilates and stuff. Anyway, I don't know what people do with their free time. I started making, stupid patches and other stuff. Anyway, okay, keep going. Keep going. What do we get?
So, by the way, I did watch your Skillshare course, so that was super helpful. Just a quick plug there. If you haven't seen it, Aaron Draplin has a fantastic course on Skillshare. He's not paid me to say this, but you should totally check it out. Okay, so we have some questions from the audience, and they're sort of linked to what we just talked about before we switch gears. And I'll ask them now before we move forward. One of them is, and this is actually something that even I would want to know, is, how do you get feedback when you're working solo? Because that's something that we're so dependent on to guide and shape the work that we do.
Well, you know, what's that one chat app? I can't remember. Something chat. I don't know. I tend to stay away from the ones that become like social, just kind of shit talking. I don't know, like whatever. Like the Slacks and stuff have kind of gotten away from me because I just can't keep up with all the notifications and stuff. But there's some chat app. I can't remember, live chat or chat room or something. I don't remember. The guys were sending me the damn things for it. Wait a second. I'm getting there. Clubhouse. Now,
Ah,
Clubhouse is interesting because it wasn't a heavy lift. You jump on there with a bunch of friends, and then someone can show something, and then I'll discuss it. That's, we're all in our backyards. Well, one of the ways I do it here is I have a close friend that's a confidant that I will show work to and say, hey, just give this a once over. He does the same for me. Because the idea of looking at 3 feet from me to the monitor right now versus his 30,000 feet maybe or 3,000 feet, there's a lot you can see. There's a lot you can see there, different. So it's like different sets of eyes are really helpful. So I'll bring in my little moonbeam Lee, my girlfriend, and she'll just have a different set of eyes to say, wow, did you see how close this was to this corner? And it's like, oh, I wasn't looking at that. I was worrying about, X, Y, and Z and not worrying about A, B, C. So I share is the quickest way to answer that. I share that. And I have it with friends, and it might be, I have buddies who send me email attachments and say, hey, when you get a second, weigh in on this, or can I just get one more set of eyes on this thing before it leaves? I'm just nervous. I'm missing something. And you know what? That's a scratch my back, you scratch your back kind of thing, and it comes back. So I just have a group of people that I can go to. And by the way, more eyeballs is always better than just my two. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just, It's a simple thing, but I know we're all here on our own. Now there are platforms for it, like Dribble and stuff, but due to the sort of NDA nature of some of the projects I work on, you can't really show that stuff. So I have confidence. Yeah, it's just like just be open to like sharing be vulnerable to say, hey, I'm nervous about this. So who's out there? So and every now and again, I'll post something on my Instagram and say, hey, what's your thoughts on this? What could I do better? Because what, here's the deal. I like the ability to learn. I like being open to like I missed something because then I learned from that. Like just be open to that. I didn't just get to this point because I'm just my hands touch the keyboard and some kind of magic happens. No, it's a process of wringing things out and wrestling stuff around and putting the time in. Sometimes you nail it. So share with your friends and close a close source around you. And just be open to like having to make a couple changes. Sometimes you're not looking at the right way. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. In fact, I think one thing that you touched on, and I don't know if other people sort of caught that, is that although we say that, okay, can you give me some feedback on this? But the moment somebody starts giving the feedback, we put like a wall in front of us.
Oh
So I
yeah.
think the first thing that I think you just said, which was brilliant, is that when asking for feedback, first be humble and open to receiving that feedback. I think that was beauty. That is the most beautiful thing. And then two, is that when you're getting feedback on, let's say, design work, it doesn't have to be a designer, right? And then and then in those situations where you do need some senior designer or whatever to look at your work, start building a peer network where you
Yes.
scratch my back, I scratch yours. So I think that in that stepwise process is first be open and humble to receive that feedback. To it doesn't have to be a designer. Show it to your friends, your girlfriend. I mean, I don't have one, but I'll find someone else's girlfriend to show it to her, and hopefully they don't mind. But
Or well, how about this? How about this? It's like my weaknesses, which are
yeah,
like um, pepperoni pizza. Well, my weakness is like sometimes syntax and spelling and stuff. I have a friend like it's like a ticker. It's like a ticker. It's like a little hourly rate. Like, hey, I need 15 minutes of your time. Give this a thing, and I just send the guy money. He has his strength is that he can just blast through stuff, catch everything. He's a proofreader, right? That's a service that you hire. That's part of the budget, whatever that means. I might pay him in field notes or DDC stuff because he's a buddy and whatever else. But no, it's like I have a lawyer. When I need help, the ticker starts, and it's just part of the deal, And he's helping me negotiate a big scary contract, So like I have a friend who he just looks at stuff differently, right? So I try to hire him. Be open to that, Like I have some things that I know pretty clearly I could work on, so you have someone help you get across the finish line. That's all just about being efficient.
love it. Yeah, and yeah, be open to even hiring other people and bringing other people into the project that you're working on. That is again, that actually makes it incentivizes the other person to do a good job.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly switch gears because I know that we have like 15 minutes left.
Much as you
Uh,
guys need, as much as you.
but one of the things is that on that authentic, you know being authentic and being true to who you are, and that's one of the threads that you've sort of weaved across your career, is that what's that Draplin, and this is some lingo that you use, so I'm going to use it with you, is what's that Draplin filter that you use to decide what kind of clients and projects to work on? And the reason I'm asking this is because as designers, we have this shiny object syndrome. We're constantly drawn to this project or that project, or let me work on this, or and that could be not necessarily core to what you want to do, but it's just so shiny and it looks so cool. So how do you sort of navigate that decision making, and how do you feel torn, or what are bad things that happen, or good things or that have come out of that over your career?
Well, sometimes the biggest projects that had lots of money, they just weren't right for my heart. You know what I mean? Sometimes even literally, like sports drinks and energy drinks and shit like that. I love a Coke as much as anybody else, but that's an indulgence. It's a Coke, it's a sugary ass thing. But when people dress sugary ass things up as energy drinks or something, it's a little disingenuous. And that stuff scared me, because it was like they make a lot of money, and I kind of said no to that stuff. I just wasn't interested in that stuff. I don't, if you're going to come out and say work for Coke because it's all about sugary drinks, well, then go do it, So there's been some stuff over the years that just wasn't the right fit for me because I just knew that, like, I don't want to perpetuate this kind of stuff, whatever that means. Or it was a band that I didn't agree with the way they were acting or something. There's been a couple of those. I don't care how much money's involved. If my heart's not in it, I can't go do it. But on the other respect, there's been some things that have landed in my lap that were like, okay, like right now I'm getting ready to do a job and it's going to be a challenging one, but it's something that people use all the time. I know it's very vague, but a close friend was using it for his family. And he got so excited because he said, "Oh my gosh, I use that thing X, Y, and Z this way, this way, this way." And I'm blown away by that because that's something close to me that I have an ear now that I can go and say, "All right, you are a user of this website and this stuff. So what do you think about this, this, and this?" Because his heart is there. And now I'm into that. So it's like positive. And by the way, I'm going to be paid well too. They're a big thing. So there's, I've been a little guilty of taking on jobs just because it was like good money sometimes, but I've learned my lesson. I've learned my lesson. And like you said, shiny objects. There's been some shiny ones, but I did take the job. I might have got halfway through and said, what am I doing, after I kind of learned the nature of it? But as part of our job, it's your duty to finish that shit up and get it and be done with it and do the job that you were brought in. So there's been many of those where it's like, man, I wouldn't be in the same room as these people after how they're kind of acting as much as, I want to go use their stuff when I'm done. No, no, no. No one knows about. That's the audience of like 3. It's like one shitty account manager is not what this company's about. This company's about this product that we all get to see this way. Do your job and think about it in those terms, because you can get clouded up by like being exhausted and being tired and that's not fair to their project. And by the way, if a client wants to make a mountain of changes and screw it all up like they always do, let them. There's only so much we can do. There's not, don't beat yourself up over that. If you showed good solutions and solved the problem in a creative way that met their needs and they want to dumb it down, you let them, because you know what? Their eye and their set of sensibilities, they're going to be the ones who have to wake up with that thing every day. If that's what they want, let them do that thing, right? Because sometimes we're kind of only designing for our ego, our portfolios, and only airs to show this thing and show this price tag, and that's the wrong way to look at this stuff. It's our job. To get the project done. So yeah, I'm pretty good at vetting these things. I'm pretty good at it. A couple quick phone calls to have a chat to see. And by the way, like totally fine with like being professional on the phone to say, you guys, I'm not the right fit for this thing. You guys are a hard alcohol. I don't even really drink. I can give you a list of people who drink everything that's wet, who would love to work on this thing. And that kind of heart's what you need. I'm okay with that. There's a big, this is a privileged position to be in. I know. I got people coming after me and I get to pick and choose jobs, but who even gets to talk like that? It's insane. Well, here's another thing to think about. Sometimes if something's not the right fit for me, you have to have the ability, the graciousness to say, I'm not the right one, but here's a list. Here's a list of some people that would be awesome fits for this, because I've gotten a lot of kids jobs because it just wasn't for me, or I was too busy, but I knew I could have done it, but I was just too busy in the weeds and other stuff. Your ability to, I guess, help someone else's name is a really cool thing to be able to do, instead of just, no, I can't do it, or not even reply. If they take the time, by the way, if the guy writes me and says, how much are your logos? I'm not even interested. But if you can see someone writes and says, hey, we like what you do. Here's our project. Here's what we're thinking. Be a human and write back and say, you guys, I'm a little too busy right now, but let me recommend a couple friends. Or I'm a little too busy now. I just don't know if I'm the right person for that job, but thank you for considering me. Always end on, that these are all good transactions. Because you know what? They might come back in 6 months and say, hey, we're ready to do that set of merch or something now. And now we need your help. It's like, then there's just a job. So there's just be a good citizen. You know what I mean? Like, just be good. Yeah, yeah. Be a good person. We'll just say, I'm trying.
Love it, love it. I think so. There's a couple of things from the audience which I'm gonna just go through in a second, but I'll just quickly summarize some of the things that you said, which really spoke to me specifically as well. One was, be honest about who you are, what you value, and be once you're kind of clear on those, that will help sort of steer your ship in the right direction. And know when, I'm not right for this, right? And then, even if you don't want to, if you choose not to work on a certain project, still exhibit craft. Always show up 100%, even if you have to say no. Exhibit it with craft. I love that. So any final thoughts before I jump into some of the audience
No,
questions?
let's
And
let them at me as long as you guys need to go.
okay, so the first one is Eric says, and this is more of a statement, shout out. Eric says, Factory Floor Friday has been one of my favorite things on the internet.
Wow. Well, I'm doing one this afternoon. But see, what's scary about the Factory Floor Fridays is, first of all, it was lonely. It was fun. It was a fun way to connect. But what happens is they start getting some numbers, and then people get a little pushy. Well, how come you're not doing it this week? It's like, first of all, you didn't sign in, for some subscription. This is just supplemental to the whole experience. And by the way, just for me, my paycheck is I want to talk to some buddies on this thing. So today we're going to do a product launch with it. So Eric, come check it out. There'll be a graphic coming up after this, on my Instagram. Um, you know, when something turns into a jobby job, kind of job, it gets a little weird, and that's kind of what that was turning into. So listen, I get a lot of smart people coming after me and saying, why don't you have a YouTube channel? You could monetize all this. It's just like, oh man, because then you got to have a microphone and a fucking light and all this other things and you gotta talk, you gotta open your mouth and all this other shit and press record and all this and process stuff. It's like, what's cool about the Factory Floor Fridays is it's like you get in, you bang around, you watch all the comments come flying in. I pick up my guitar. I like rats down a rope off a ship. They just scurry off after I start playing that damn guitar, and it's like, it can be this sort of like soft place. So Eric, I'm glad you dug it. I'm gonna do one tonight, and I'll think about that, man. Maybe we'll keep doing these and just make them a half hour long. I mean, they were turning into this thing, Paul, where I was there for 2.5 hours bullshit with people, and that gets a little weird, like dinner. Lee's getting dinner ready, and the shit's cold by the time I'm done. So it can get away from you. It can get away from you. But well, thank you, Eric. Thank you. Come tonight.
Love it.
We'll be there. What tonight? Couple hours.
And then Theory asks, hopefully I've got that right, Thary, ask, is there anything you haven't done yet in your career that you still want to do or haven't had the time or courage to try yet?
Oh well, I mean, it sounds so weird, but I have realized many of my graphic design dreams, and it's not necessarily I want to go make a logo for the planet Mars or something like that. Some big lofty thing. It's more like, can I just get myself to a rhythm where I can sleep a good night, get up, enjoy what I do. It's not even about the money. Um, Enjoy what I do, have a little sprinkle of something that can help people, have a little sprinkle of something that makes me a good chunk of cash to help people, and then have a little bit of something to that just surprises me, kind of. And by the way, that's been my pursuit for the last bunch of years. So it's not necessarily bigger things, like really, it's like, it sounds so weird, but it's like to make enough and save enough to where I can slow this pace down to whatever pace is best for me, because I've just been cooking for years, and um, that's a weird. Downshifting is a weird thing because all I've ever known is just trying to progress and progress and progress and get kind of more and more and more, and being thankful for everything that dropped in my lap, and understanding how lucky I was that was I manifested that or something. I saw a comment here, something about where I said something about being, feeling really privileged about, this, even being able to talk about this stuff. And it's like, I worked for that, in some respect. But what about when you're just starting out? Well, I try to share for someone who might not have that spot to be in, like, just to kind of say, hey, here's how I got ahead. I took every job. Some there was no money. Some there was lots of money. Some there was, it was just purely for the buzz of helping somebody. Well, you need to be open to that, because what happened with that, I would show that work, share that stuff, and then it would trick people to be like, wow, he's doing some pretty cool work. They didn't know it was for lunch from a friend. You know what I mean? Like, there's no paycheck attached. I was just open to that. And in a weird way, that manifested or tricked graphic design into hiring me. When I had zero voice and zero power, or whatever you want to even, what is it even, zero interest in what I did, I still was pumping stuff out to just a small channel, a small channel. That hasn't really changed. It was just this ability to, like, believe in myself and share, and put it out there into the world. And if people didn't like it, well, so what? A couple of them did, and cool things came out of it. Clients and retainers and stuff came out of purely the zone of play, right? So I don't know if I'm tying that in good enough for Preet there, but the idea that I know I'm in a lucky position now, so it's my duty to share some of these weird little tricks and tips or frequencies of, like, hey, I don't know how this worked for me. I can't put my finger on it, but here's some of the building blocks. And you got to be open to this, this, and this. By the way, it's the only formula I know. There's other people that would tell me you're nuts working for free. You're nuts working late like you do. You're nuts for having a face like you do. I mean, a lot of things. But you know what? They're forgettable as shit. That's the kind of person that'll tell you that stuff. It's the one person who pulled me aside and said, I want to be able to pick up my kid and drop off my kid every day for school. Here's how I'm going to do it. And it was like tactical, and it was awesome and human. And it wasn't about money, and it wasn't about this. It was about just like, this is what it takes for me to be able to pull that off. And that's the way I look at all this stuff. It's like, I want to be able to roll out of bed, work late if I want to work late, roll to bed at the right time, have my obligations out of the way, and then start working, and that's what I'm always sort of working towards, or I want to be a cowboy and I want to live on a ranch and ride a horse. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to answer it in a fun way. I don't know, maybe someday go build a house, um, someday have everyone around me, all their debt paid off. I'm working towards that, stuff like that, not just me, like I have my little sister and Lee and everyone around me,
Right. Okay, so I think my takeaway from that is just having clarity in your priorities and things that you care about, and just chase them and just pursue them. That's one takeaway. And the other one is that, because you love what you do and it's fun, remembering what's fun and staying focused on that. And by putting out so much volume of work, that's going to attract more work. And I think those are two sort of uh, takeaways from what you just said. And I know that we're sort of at the end of our time. I have one question left, and I think that we can sort of, after that, wrap up. My final question to you would be, have you ever thought about the metaverse, NFTs, and any
yeah.
of this stuff at all?
A little bit. I mean, it's too easy just to kind of say, oh, come on, you know, what were these guys who, well, that's what people did about video games. That's what people did about, I don't know, maybe iPhones, well, you have a computer in your hand, someone, shit on that when that stuff came out. I looked into it. It feels a little empty to me sometimes to be like, I'm the one person who has it. There's all this value attached to it. I like screen prints. I like things that you can make a bunch of and sell them at a fair price, and everyone gets to enjoy it, and not just one guy who's got the most expensive fucking file on his machine. It's just weird. It's just, like, look at me, I got everything. I don't like that shit. I like, hey, look at us. We all have what we need to make. uh-oh, there I go with some of that democratic socialism shit. Well, I don't need all this. I don't need clout, and I don't need like to have my name look bigger in type. I just want to be able to live my life, and be relatively healthy and have the resources around me to do more with it. But um, it just gets a little like keeping up with the Joneses with me. Look what I have. Look what this sold for. And a lot of it's hype based. It's like, ugh, like the craft is kind of like, the reason you're interested in that person is because they got paid out through some IPO. You're not interested in that guy because he put the time in. You're interested in that guy because of some kind of hype vessel. That's kind of what that stuff means to me. It's like, well, I'd rather have my hype be like he touched every one of those books, or he touched every one of those field notes, or whatever, and just that's enough for us. It's not worth thousands of dollars. They're $9.99 now, Canadian. That might be somewhere more like 11, whatever, the loonie or whatever translation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just not interested in that. I had a bunch of guys approach me and say, Draplin, do you see what this thing's doing? And it was like, is it just to make money? Because I play a longer game. I play more of a conservative game in that department. Because I also saw the backlash with friends who went after it, put a bunch of stuff out there, and then had like a little check mark next to their name of like, hey, you're making some server room, set on fire because of all this, like, I don't know, energy used on this shit. By the way, there's going to be a lot more of that stuff coming. There's ways to monetize all this stuff. I mean, I tend to stay a little more old school. I like the records. It slows me down. I like to make the art that goes on a record. That slows me down. The idea of it only being digital vapor that much more, it's just a little empty for me. That's all. But hey, if you want to go make spinning doinklets and things and bullshits and I don't know, whatever, $47 million sold to some fucking oil tycoon somewhere, hey, go for it. I'm worried about cashing a check for 1,200 today. Excited about that. Anyway.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, the one thing that I've always, in every talk, in all the stuff that you put out, and even in this response, you're always authentic and honest, and just there's always like a clear um, expression of your values across everything that you do. So I'm just going to quickly summarize uh, sort of the things that we've talked about, just the high level stuff, and I'll let you sort of any final concluding thoughts, and then we'll let Preet sort of come back in and sort of wrap things up with a bow tie. So very quickly, just remember, as a designer when you're starting out, or when you're a little bit more mature and a senior, just remember that it has to be fun, be thankful, and keep it simple. The other piece is learn to talk and express your craft everywhere, not just the design work that you do, but in emails, in how you show up, and even when you don't want to do the work, how do you decline a job, right? And organize yourself. That shows in everything that you do, especially if somebody's going to hire you. Organize those Photoshop files, organize those emails. I love that. And think about the person that you're communicating to, what their experience is. So stop sending 45 gigabyte attachments. and and then the other thing that I really really liked was that when you solicit feedback, be open to receiving that feedback, and it doesn't have to be a designer giving you that feedback. And build that peer network where you can scratch each other's back, but and also be open to hiring somebody to give you that feedback, and edit that copy or tweak that design, whatever that looks like. And then finally, being honest and being clear on your values, and knowing this is not for me, where we talked about the shiny object syndrome. And finally, just have clarity in your purpose and in your priorities. I love this talk. Any final words, Draplin, from your side?
Um, Thank you for having me, and for having me back last year. I always wonder about these guys have me at these things, and you don't hear anything the next year, and there's always a little bit of like, maybe they just didn't like me. There's always that. But hey, you guys are doing a great job. This stuff looks good. You got great graphics. I go through. You have an incredibly diverse and interesting pile of people that are loading into this thing. So keep up that good work. Thank you for allowing me in to do this stuff, and share with you guys. It's cool. Everybody listening, be safe and be curious and be, dare I say, creatively compliant, and wear your mask and stuff. And let's beat this shit back so we can all get back to our regular lives at some point. So just be safe and, stay healthy, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much as well.
All right.